Welcome back to the Intention Podcast with Tami Palmer, a show where we unpack what it truly means to live life with intention. Today, we're going to talk about the permission to pause. To help us dive into this topic, I've invited my dear friend, Angela Kesting, onto the show. Angela is the founder of AJK Coaching, where she helps people and organizations navigate change with clarity, steadiness, and practical insight. Her approach integrates reflection, curiosity, empathy, creative problem solving, nervous system regulation, and manageable next steps, really supporting people through career transitions, health challenges, life disruptions, or simply the sense that something is out of alignment. Her work is trauma-informed, and she integrates somatic techniques into her coaching. She is a Reiki master, a volunteer with the Reiki Brigade, an organization that works to support high-stressed and first responder communities. And she's currently training in somatic experiencing. Angela is a published author and is one of the 8 contributing writers in the recently released Unmuted, Leaders Discover Their Voice to Speak Up and Stand Out, where she writes in detail about many of the topics we will cover today. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. When I was, thinking about what I wanted the show to be like, there were a handful of people that I knew I wanted on the show. And you were one of those people like hanging out in the wings. And you were probably one of my first ideation partners. I think you heard the very first recorded episode and were really my thought partner in what I wanted this to be. And we would have, every couple of weeks, we'd have a conversation around like, okay, you're going to get on the show. What's the theme? What are we going to talk about? And I just love how this has all come together. Here we are today, finally getting the recording going that we've been talking about. And this concept of permission to pause, which is really grounded in this whole somatic awareness, right?
Yes.
And you're going to start us off by like, what the heck is somatic anything? It's such a big word, right?
It is.
So tell us a little bit about somatic work and what it means and what it means to you, because I think it's also an individual thing that many of us experience.
Yes, absolutely. Well, soma means body, and somatic techniques are body-centered and are focused on body awareness. And somatic work looks at the impact of trauma on the nervous system and helps us assess where someone may be stuck in an activation pattern. And it aims to resolve and release those symptoms of stress, shock, and trauma that can accumulate in our bodies so it doesn't impact and disrupt our daily lives and our overall health.
Got it. Okay. So now in layman's terms,
yes.
What does that look like for us? How does that show up?
Yeah, let me walk you through a couple of examples. Like I've heard it described before as helping the body complete the unfinished business of the nervous system in order to return to wholeness and self-connection. And so it starts with teaching someone how to increase awareness of their experience in a given moment and how to do some gentle inquiry on what might be coming up for them and what it feels like in their body. And it can be helpful to do this obviously in moments of heightened activation, and we'll talk about what activation is. But it's also really helpful to do this in moments of calm or even joy, because that helps us build the muscle and build capacity and emotional regulation. So to talk about what this looks like in real life, let's talk about what activation is and how that can show up in different bodies at different times. So activation. Yeah, activation is a spike in your nervous system. We've all felt it. It's caused by a strong physiological or emotional reaction. Something happens, your body responds, right?
You get a text, you read the text, and you're like, cortisol up,
absolutely.
adrenaline up.
Yep, absolutely. And our bodies work that way for a reason. We're wired for survival. So we're not trying to stop or circumvent that initial response. That's there to keep us safe and aware and ready to respond. But if it's a text and not a tiger, you
I think
know,
that should be the tagline. Is this a text or a tiger?
is this a text or a tiger? What's happening, right? They're ripping up the street in front of my apartment building today. They're like breaking concrete. And so, like, hear a loud noise that you don't expect, your body startles.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. They're tearing up the street. And we're not trying to interrupt that initial reaction. I think people can beat themselves up because they're like, oh, I can't believe I reacted that way to that text. It's normal to have a reaction physiologically and emotionally to things that are happening. What matters is what we do next. And that's where
Yeah.
we work with the pause, right? That's how we know when to pause and how to work with that and how to feel into it. So let's say you
Right.
walk into your house after a long day and you see a sink full of dishes and you didn't put them there. Like, you're like, I didn't do this.
Nobody can relate to this.
Right. So you might feel some annoyance, right? You might
Right.
feel anger or
Right.
just like exhausted, deflated, but you feel something. So this is your opportunity to pause and get curious about it. What is happening? This is where you might drop in just before you go find the people. You drop in and get a sense of what is the quality of the sensation that you're feeling, and can you get curious about it? Does it feel constricted and tight, or does it feel like it's just like expanding? Is there movement to it, and where are you feeling that? Does it have a temperature, a color? Sometimes it'll have a shape or a texture, be prickly and sharp, or just like swirling and churning. Slow, fast, intensity, heavy, lightness. As you witness it and watch it, even sitting in this moment, thinking about this scenario, I start to feel it. And that's an important thing to know about our bodies and our nervous systems, is just because, something's not happening doesn't mean that we're not maybe feeling it. And for me, like, it feels like kind of this hot churning fireball that starts in my gut. And then I can feel the heat rising up, and then I feel my face get hot. And then that heat just sort of starts to expand. And it's followed by an impulse to move, to go yell at the dish leavers that are just sitting on the couch watching TV. It's an impulse to engage. It's like that fight energy. And so I can get curious about why I'm so fired up about it. It's just dishes. It's not a fire or a flood in the kitchen. And it's annoying. And yes, you want people to clean up your dishes, but if those sensations stay intense, you get to stay curious about it, and it may even surprise you. So what story does this have to tell me? Like, yeah, like you said, am I in memory? Can I remember another time that I've felt this type of activation?
Right.
And is there a need not being met? Is there a boundary that's been breached? Or maybe there's like fear or core belief. Like, for me, I think something that would come to mind here is, I'm not considered. I'm not considered in this moment. My experience isn't considered. Or, maybe I'm just
Right.
hungry and this is going to delay like dinner prep and I'm just hungry, right?
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer to what you get curious about and notice. It's information. And the point of this is to get that information and insight so that you can choose how you want to show up in moments that follow the activation, to know if you need to communicate a need, hold a boundary. Like, I'm not cleaning these up. I promised myself I wouldn't clean these up the next time this happened. It is not my mess. You might need to give a direction or a demand to someone. How do you want to show up in that moment?
I feel like we could spend the entire episode dissecting the dishes. So here's another thought that came up as you were talking is,
Yes.
what were your, how were you parented? And was there a rule that if there were dirty dishes, you got in trouble? So then you're repeating that pattern. Well, you're going to get in trouble because if I got in trouble, then you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
and not even really understanding where you're coming from.
Hmm.
Was it the rule is the dishes were going to be done before I got home and that was ignored? Or was it never stated, but you just assumed someone else would do that and then they didn't, right? Like there's so many layers of stuff happening in there.
Yeah.
But
And it's dishes, but
and it's
like
dishes, right?
yeah.
But it starts a massive fight, right? Like, cause so for a lot
Yeah.
of us, we would just explode. And then how does that person receive that? Right? Like that's an attack on them that caught them off guard that they weren't prepared for, right? And then
Yeah.
that starts a trauma cycle of like, you know, um, yeah, it's just really fascinating to kind of break it all down.
It is. When I was still working in corporate technology, I made myself one of those little what's your word bracelets where you like pound the letters in.
Oh yeah.
And my word was pause, because that was my reminder to check in. I had noticed that I was guilty of polluting a new space with an old place, like carrying something that had happened earlier in the day, earlier in the week, in a different context, maybe into the space that I was in. And I wanted to change that pattern for myself. So I created a little like mantra to follow. And that bracelet was my cue. And it was to pause, then listen, consider, and choose. So we've been talking about the pause and what we can do within that pause. The listening for me was tuning in and taking in information, and then moving into considering, like being curious about it, weighing my options and opportunities, and then making a choice, which was a response, not a reaction. And later, I learned that this sequence I was following is quite similar to what is taught and practiced in certain somatic work. So that was
Oh
serendipitous
wow.
and validating.
Yeah. It just came to you naturally.
Well, but it's also universal, right? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think this stuff is inaccessible. And I don't think it has to be, and we'll talk about this, I think, a bit later. It's not something that we have to carve out a whole like quiet moment for. Like, we can fold it into our day to day. And that's my goal with this, is
Yeah.
helping to teach people about activation and then the impulses that accompany it when it shows up. So we've talked about fight energy, but there's other ways that activation can show up. And I want to talk about those because I think it's important as we start to see this in ourselves and in other people. It's good to know what you're looking at, and you can be like, okay, I see what's happening here. So flight is another
Mm-hmm.
one. In a
Yeah.
situation, you might feel an impulse to just get the heck out of there. And you can use the pause, and it can be a quick pause and often needs to be in the case of a flight reaction to discern if flight is a helpful or necessary response. Like if you're running from a bear or or the tiger that we talked about, or a fire alarm is going off, then yes, get out of there, run. If you are in a super boring or annoying work meeting, or you're doing something like a podcast and you want to run for the door, you can pause first, right? You still might decide to make a run for it, but in that pause, you can remind yourself that you are safe if you are safe. And maybe make a decision that better serves you in that moment, maybe staying in that meeting. It doesn't mean your impulse to leave is wrong. It means you get to choose your action and your response, and that you can intentionally and safely later clear that activated energy so it doesn't build up. Like, you might be familiar with that quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I like that one. And I think of it often. And somatic work helps with this because our bodies have good information for us. And we just need to tune in and listen. And then we can discern what's needed in a particular situation. How do I want to show up?
Yep.
And
Do you
it
know who
doesn't
said
always,
that quote?
It is attributed often to Viktor Frankl,
Oh,
although I think
yes.
there's some debate, like as there is in any quote. Like you're like, did who said that one? But I believe it's attributed to Viktor Frankl, and
That's
I like
great.
to think he said it at some point, given his work. He probably,
Right.
yeah,
Even if he
that's
didn't initiate it, he
right.
reiterated it.
It's kind of his jam.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, some types of activation aren't always active looking like fight or flight is.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be, and these are the ones that are in really interesting to notice in ourselves. Sometimes it's more of a shutdown or a freeze. Like
Mm,
you just go into overwhelm, like going back to the dishes. You just you just stare at them, stuck, slow. Sometimes like there's a thing that can people call functional freeze, where it you don't realize you're in freeze, but you're just scrolling, you're just doom scrolling, frozen on the couch, scroll, like pull the slot machine. Like I just, and it's a thing that we can catch ourselves in, um, and it can serve us well in certain circumstances. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it is another way that this shows up, and there's not a discharge of energy in the moment associated with it. Another activation response, and this is, I think, the trickiest one for me personally, at least, is to appease or like to fawn, because it can look accommodating and helpful. And sometimes it's rewarded societally. So, people pleasing is one way this can take shape. And the pause is really powerful here because we can look at why we have the impulse to ingratiate or accommodate or people please in a moment. And when we catch ourselves in the impulse to do those things, looking at what the activation feels like in our bodies is very telling. Like, is there a sense of fear or urgency? You can get curious about that. Am I trying to manipulate someone's perception of me or control outcomes? Is this a conscious choice or does it feel like a compulsion? Am
yeah.
I doing it to stay safe or included? Right? I don't want to get kicked out. Like, how do I make sure I shapeshift my way into this and make sure
Yeah.
everybody's happy and stable? Do we believe our value depends mainly on what we can provide to others? I look at this for myself all the
Mhm.
time because I
Yeah.
am naturally wired just through as I look at my childhood, like I'm wired to fix and manage and control and
Yes.
overfunction and overhelp. And if I drop
Yes.
into my body, when I feel that impulse, which I've gotten better at doing with practice, I can get a better sense of what's driving that impulse. And then I get to choose how I want to engage. Like, does this person really need my help? Did they ask for
Mhm.
my help? Or am I just feeling uncomfortable? And I feel like I have to act on it. This happens all the time in parenting.
It happens in relationships.
Yes.
It happens all the time. And I haven't heard of fawn in that sequence, but
Yeah.
it makes so much sense because what you're often doing is responding to somebody else's activation,
Yeah.
right? Somebody else explodes,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
then
yeah.
your response is to appease, to get them to a quiet state so
Hmm.
that you don't have to address the explosion because you don't have the energy to fight back, right? And the freeze doesn't feel like it satisfies the situation. So the fawn just tries to make everything. I think you see this a lot in domestic violence. I think you see it a lot in a lot of different situations. And I can think of myself of times where I would go to that naturally, and how, part of my growth journey is to move out of that space and no longer do that. And man, is that hard.
It's so hard. That's why the pause is powerful,
Yeah.
because we cannot expect to change this. These patterns are well worn often. And I think we need to give ourselves grace and also appreciation, because these things happen to keep us safe, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
they work until they don't.
Yep. Yep. And
And
that's
that's
part, that's a big piece of it is like, is my, is the safety I get from a fawn response worth it? Is it true safety, right? And that's what you learn over time.
mhm.
That's like, maybe that's not as satisfying as I once believed it is. And
Yeah.
that comes with maturity and experience.
And you realize like it actually is abandoning yourself in those moments or pressing down on your needs or your voice or your intuition or whatever it might be, like over time. And this is where the cumulative impact of something like this can really start to break down our bodies and start to show up as health issues.
Mhm.
Autoimmune disease is a big one that happens, especially in women. Gabor Mate talks about this in his work, and it's
Yep.
fascinating. And it's, I mean, there's a lot of different resources that touch on this, and the science of it and the lived experience of it is really fascinating. And, I just think it's important for us to safely try to explore this. And it can be hard. Like at first, we might, if we are very much in an activation cycle and we haven't learned how to tune into it, there's a couple things that are important to keep in mind. First, it can feel like I don't have time for the pause. What are you talking about? I don't have time for anything. And I hear that and I feel it. But the thing I want people to know is that the pause does not have to be long to be effective. When I work with people on this, we are trying to build muscle, like build the muscle
Mhm.
metaphorically, for going through this cycle of inquiry. And in doing that, we help people calibrate their internal compass so they can better sense what feels okay to them and what does not, what is truly safe, so they can hear their own wisdom, their intuition, like what you and Jess talked about in the intuition
Yeah,
episode.
exactly.
How do you tune into that? And you get
Mhm.
better and better at it. And the whole thing can
Mhm.
actually be done pretty quickly. Like it can become second nature, and you can do it in many moments of the course of a day or a week, especially if you're practicing it in times of calm. You don't just want to do this when you're in activation, right?
Mhm.
It's really valuable to do it when you are in times of calm or joy and to sink in and be like, I'm on this walk, cool bird, what a neat rock. Look at the way the sun is hitting the water and sense into how those things feel. Like that's a thing that you can call in a tough moment too, is remembering, oh, that morning sun on Lake Michigan. Like you have a tradition around going to see the sunrise with your daughter,
Yep.
right? That's an experience you can call on because it feels a certain way in your body. There might be a settling, a familiarity, a safety, and that is powerful. Like
Mhm.
this is a powerful tool to call in and be aware of those sensations. Sometimes something will come up and it's an activation that feels uncomfortable. And in the moment, I'm going to need to take another look at this when I have time and space to do it, when there's more space for reflection and attention. And you can do that. You can note it, clock it, and say, I'm going to come back later. And when you do come back to it, you come back to it with intention and continue to work with it, right? Hey, this thing happened. I want to spend a little more time with it. I want to go back into it and
Right.
explore it. And it's a powerful tool for emotional regulation and presence in any moment. In
Mhm.
the my chapter of the book Unmuted that you mentioned earlier, one thing I write about is again polluting that new space with an old place. And I think we have a responsibility for the energy we bring into our daily lives and into the spaces that we occupy. And I'm sure we've all experienced this. Like you said, it's that accumulation of traffic and then dishes. And then the next thing you know, you're yelling at someone. It's totally normal and very common, but it's not easy on our systems. And
Right.
it's often not easy on the nervous systems of those around us. And it can really disrupt home and health and life and work and relationships.
It was interesting when you say, like, sometimes people feel like they don't have time for the pause. And my immediate response, and I hope other people got there too, is like, you don't not have time. Like, if you don't do this, it's going to lead to these sort of knee-jerk reactions that have their own issues that create problems, right? And so you can pull all of that back and stop a whole chain of things happening if you can take a pause.
It's like I don't know if you've heard the thing about the two arrows. I like this one too. The first arrow is the dishes, right? You're like, the second arrow is having an outsized reaction about the dishes that does more damage to your system and someone else's,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
do we really want a second arrow here? And that's the one that
Yeah.
we get to make a decision about.
I am. A story is coming to mind and I want to share it
Please.
because when my daughter was 11 and she was in that phase where she was testing boundaries and really starting to find a sense of herself, there was a very small window of slamming doors, the rolling eyes slamming doors. And
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
very long, but she did it once to me and I lost it. And I decided that what she needed in that moment, and I didn't pause, what she needed in that moment was intensity and power. And so I came to the door and I started pounding and I just looked at her and I said, "Don't you ever do that to me again." And I had this roar come up out of me, right? And she was shell shocked, right? And started crying. And I walked away. And I am so, so grateful for this and will forever be grateful for this. About a half an hour later, she comes up to me and very clearly explained to me, "Mom, when you do that, it scares me and it doesn't help me learn and grow. Can you find a different way to communicate with me?" And I was like, holy crap. I was mortified, embarrassed,
hmm
and it completely changed my parenting and my focus. But kids don't do that. They don't come back to you and tell you how you're parenting them incorrectly and what they need from you.
yeah.
And it was such a gift and it was such a brilliant level of awareness that she gave me that stopped years of bad behavior that was just going to grow and grow and grow. And so when we can take that pause, which is what she did, right?
hmm
Like, and really thought about, what do I need from mom?
Yeah.
She didn't let it burn up inside of her and create
hmm
an armor of then how she was going to respond, where we were in this battle of wills for the next several years that most families go through. It really elevated our relationship. And I just want to share that for the parents out there who've done things like that, thinking it's the right thing, or not even thinking, just reacting.
Yeah.
It just shows those patterns that can get set.
Yeah, she named it,
Yeah.
right? There's such power in naming the thing. And she did take a pause before talking with you about it. And that allowed you to take a pause. And I want to tell you, Tami, that yes, you had a moment of hijack reaction, but an 11-year-old can't do that unless they've been parented well.
Thank you.
So, I mean, and I
She had
think
to
this
feel
is,
safe to come to me, right? Obviously.
yes. And I think
Yeah.
we have to, as parents especially, because, oh, do we not all have those moments, right? And I think that there is such power in that repair that we have to
Yes.
give ourselves grace. We have to know that there is always time and space to bring awareness in and to model a change. It's powerful to not double down in that moment. You could have doubled down and you didn't. You paused and took a beat, and it's huge. And
Right.
it's It's hard though. Like that's why we have a responsibility to ourselves. Like, so let's say we have paused and we've noticed, but in the case of the example that you just gave, it probably was activation around something like that, a memory, a pattern, a rule in your house, something that has that building over time. If we don't release that activated energy, if we don't get it out of our systems, it will stay stuck and build and build. So I want to talk a little bit about tools that help us release what's stuck. Because if we're not fighting or fleeing, those are active things, right? If we're freezing, fawning, even, in any activation, there's like usually a little bit more steam to be released. I
Yeah.
can give you an example. So, like a week ago today, right now, in fact, I was sitting in the dentist chair. I was getting a teeth cleaning, no big deal. And I didn't want to be there because I didn't want to be there. And I noticed myself, like I was just getting overwhelmed by, like, it was sneaking up on me, the lights, the sounds, the sensations. Now I know more about how to shore myself up for that experience, and that it can be really overstimulating for my nervous system, but it's hard. And I dropped in to my body, and I noticed that I was like pressing my hands together and digging my nails into my palm, and I was clenched, and I was pushing back in my chair as if it was going to get me further away. I was trying to flee through the back of the dentist chair. And as I was noticing what was showing up in my body, I could bring it into conscious awareness. And I was noticing what I was doing in activation. And I took a minute to thank my body for letting me know something was going on that I should pay attention to. And I reminded myself that while I was uncomfortable, I was safe in that space and with those people. And I changed what I was doing with my hands. I, instead of digging I gently just pressed my palms together, like in an intentional way. And
Yeah.
then I asked myself if that felt helpful, and it did. It gave me a sense of like just a bit of release. And
Yeah.
then I reminded myself that I could ask my dental hygienist, who was very kind and attentive and thoughtful. I could ask her for her break anytime I needed one, just a minute to just take a break. And I knew it was going to be over. It's going to be over in 30 minutes. And so I got my clean bill of dental health and I left. And before I got in my car and just started driving away, I noticed I still had some built up activation energy in my body. And I considered my choices for shaking that off. And shake it off is an
Shake it
expression.
off.
Yeah, it's an expression for a reason, right? It's like, oh, shake it off. Um, so when animals out in nature freeze or play dead to hide from or appear uninteresting to predators, that's often a very effective survival response. It can keep them safe in that moment of potential threat. And they're under those moments of potential threat a lot in the course of their day,
Yeah.
eat or be eaten, right? And when the moment passes and they're out of danger and it's safe for them to move again, they are often observed standing up and shaking their bodies. And that shaking, we've seen our dogs probably do it, maybe
Hmm.
our cats, like that shaking is a way to discharge that intense activation, that survival response that happened, but they didn't release it because they were frozen, like they were staying still. And some scientists have noted that animals don't seem to carry the trauma in their bodies the way that we do, or have long lasting nervous system impact, because it's probably because they're literally shaking it off. So, we should
Hmm.
dance it out.
Yes.
like, and I did. I like got to the car and I shook my hands out, 'cause that had been a place it was showing up. I shook my arms out. I gave myself a little jiggle. Um, before I just started driving, right? Because what am I going to do? Just start driving after that? Maybe not the best choice.
Right. Right.
You can do a lot of things in these moments that are accessible to us. Like you can I could have gone into the bathroom before I left and pressed my hands against the wall. That can be very satisfying. I, could have turned on the radio and been singing at the top of my lungs or just screamed in my car. It's fun to scream in your car. You
Yeah.
can dance, draw, run, exercise, cry, blow bubbles, like anything that releases something kinetically, and you get to choose it. Like that's the other powerful thing about this is really noticing I have a choice here, because you're not
Yes.
trapped, you're not helpless. Like you get to really get that felt sense of choice, and then you get to make a choice. And it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, because the goal is just to notice. Is this working for me? I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try something else, right? And you are in the process of doing that. You're acknowledging the activation. You're like, you thank it. It's trying to help you. It's trying to keep you safe and aware. And then you send it on its way. Don't keep it trapped. Like, don't carry it around with you stuck. It wants to be free.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of things you can do. Let's talk about some of the other options. And, many of these are low or no cost. They're right there, potentially in your home at your fingertips. Like, if you have kids, like, are there art supplies around? Just sit down and make some art. Sit down with your kids and make some art. You can have a dance party in the kitchen while you're prepping dinner. You can play with your dog or your cat or your bird or your lizard or whatever animal you have in your house. You can sing to them. You can build this into the course of things you're already doing throughout the
Right.
day, but you're doing it with intention and with movement. And a little is sometimes plenty, right? You get to find that equilibrium. You get to calibrate your compass and follow and sense and see and notice. And thank yourself for those moments when you're in self-connection and you took care of yourself.
I was just thinking about how um, babies and toddlers are so good at this, right? Like that's what a tantrum is, and that's what this crying fits are. It's a release of energy, and how we slowly condition them to stop doing that.
Mm,
But if we could, instead of stop doing it, transform it to something that's less aggressive. And so, like, yeah, you don't need to have a screaming meltdown in the middle of the grocery store. But if you're feeling that energy, when we get back outside, let's shake it off before we get in the car, right? And teach them ways to do that that are more socially acceptable, without just saying, stop, we don't do that. Because that's part of the problem is we don't learn how to properly do this. And then we do just digest the energy, which then can, as you said, can turn into health problems. It can turn into trauma. Like energy has to go somewhere.
yeah,
And if you don't dispel it, it's going to swirl inside you and turn into whatever it wants to turn into.
yeah.
And we've got to find ways to clear it, which is what I love about Reiki. And I love that you do Reiki, because that's such a great way to clear energy.
Yeah, and it puts you in co-regulation with someone. Like when we, work with
Mm-hmm.
police officers or 911 operators, giving them a moment of knowing that they can be safe in stillness. Stillness can be really scary for people. We'll talk about that. Another thing I want to hit with the example that you just gave of the toddler and the tantrum is when we shut that down and say we don't do this or this is bad, we are teaching people to ignore their instincts to keep themselves safe and healthy and balanced.
Exactly.
And instead of shutting it down, let's redirect it into something that might be a little bit easier on their system too, but also allows for that release. Um, we can teach anyone how to use that pause and do the inquiry. It's playful actually, and we'll talk about play, but I want to talk about how we connect people with resources, because this is part of what I do in my work, and it can be really eye-opening for people to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I could just like color like and see
Right.
how it feels.
For sure.
Like you're doing that for people too, connecting them with resources and information in your coaching and through this podcast and through your retreats and your workshops, like looking at just a few of the resources you've introduced in this podcast season. In the last episode, journaling and writing is a huge help to people. There's very compelling data around the practice and value of expressive writing, especially for grief.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Tanya spoke about this beautifully in your last episode. Creativity covered with Cynthia. Creativity in all of its forms can be a wonderful release. It can also be a real clarifier. Like if you sit down just to draw something and then you look at what you've drawn, you're like, oh, okay, that maybe has something to show me. And creativity is a great antidote, a great balancing for anxiety and activation. Intuition is foundational to somatic inquiry and this type of work. And your episode with Jess helped people learn ways to listen to and connect with their intuition so that when they're moving through their day or in relationship with others, it's a healthy connection that doesn't subvert their own needs or have them self-abandoning, self-sacrificing, or ignoring that voice, that intuitive voice that's like, I don't know if this is the right way to do this.
Yeah.
Another one I want to mention is astrology, because this one I think came back as one of your most popular, most liked episodes.
Yeah, it was.
And I think what that allowed people to do, right, is to see astrology through a different lens and to shift some assumptions. Just to learn.
Yeah.
Because it is an incredible tool for self-reflection and exploring choices, right? You get the weather report, right? And you get to notice how you feel about it, see what might be lighting up. It's information, it's a guide, it's a tool. And there are so many tools, and there's such an opportunity for play as we do this. And it is okay to be playful. Like being playful or introducing some fun and lightness into this process is absolutely not meant to diminish or dismiss the gravity or seriousness of anything we may be navigating. It's a necessary balancing because a sense of play relates to a felt sense of safety. And it helps us
Yeah.
orient to things in our environment that feel safe to us. And that's a grounding resource for us. So when things get intense or overwhelming, rooting back into what feels like a felt sense of safety. And oftentimes when we're in a sense of playfulness, we are feeling safe. So what are those things we do? What do we gravitate toward? And how do we use that to expand capacity, broaden perspective? That's why I strongly recommend doing these somatic check-ins with yourself in moments when things are good,
Yeah.
calm, and settled. Like you build that felt sense of what that feels like. And that's compass calibration. When I walk into a room, what's the vibe?
This episode is brought to you by Edie Boutique. Last week, I popped into their gift shop Marigold and to get a few birthday items for friends and family. I purchased an adult coloring book that was all book and library themed. And I wanted to show you guys this great movie themed jigsaw puzzle in a bucket. It literally looks like a popcorn bucket. If you're watching instead of listening to my podcast, you can see me holding it up. It's really cute. There were a ton of golf themed items for the golfers in your life. Edie has 8 locations, including Lake Geneva, Libertyville, Elmhurst, Geneva, Illinois, Valparaiso, Indiana, and Milwaukee, both in the 3rd Ward and Whitefish Bay. Their gift shop Marigold that I just mentioned is attached to the Park Ridge, the Lake Geneva, and the Libertyville locations. Edie Boutique is lifestyle clothing to dress you for all of your everyday needs, and their styling team can assist you in your wardrobe needs. Ready for some new pieces as we head into summer? Check them out. Since this closes out my first season, I want to extend a huge thank you to Edie for funding 4 episodes in this season and the 4 they'll be sponsoring in my upcoming fall season. And a callback thank you to Tarly Skincare for sponsoring an episode, and of course to my dad for getting me started with the first 3 episodes. This podcast is made possible through sponsorships. If you'd like to support future episodes, reach out. I'd love to feature you on my show. Thank you. We talked about screaming and, getting the energy out, but there's also laughter.
Oh
And
my
I think
gosh, laughter's
laughter is
great.
underutilized. And we talked in my episode with Esther Cohen about her laughter yoga and her clown
Yes.
school. And just think about when you have a good belly laugh, one of those ones where you can't catch your breath, think about how exhausted you are at the end of a laughing session. Think about the amount of energy you release in laughing. And it's also very, very high vibration.
Yes.
And sometimes we can laugh through intense moments, right? You feel a little
Hmm.
guilty, like you should be serious, but it's an energy release. And again, I just got a memory pop in that I want to share of
Sure.
the time my grandmother died, and she was living in California. And so my family had traveled out there. She was cremated. And what we ended up doing was spreading her ashes on a catamaran out in the ocean. It was a gorgeous,
Okay.
gorgeous ceremony. But leading up to it, there were a day or two before we got there. And my dad, I think he rented like this cool little sports car for the weekend we were there. And
Okay.
he would, take a turn or he'd drive a little fast. And we're like, hang on, grandma's in the trunk, remember? And it just became this ongoing joke.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we were like, should we be laughing? That's really not funny. But it really did help us bring levity to the situation. And I know my grandma was loving it, like have fun
Yes.
with this, right? Like we don't always have to be heavy and serious. But I think those times where you're like, you want to laugh and you don't know if you should, think about it from the perspective of this is a healthy way to release the energy that I have around the situation. And
Hmm.
it's totally okay.
Yes. It is totally okay. I'm so glad you brought up laughter. It is actually my favorite one. I can relate to the funeral example. I am from a big Irish family, like my extended family, and I don't know, some of the like most sharply funny moments ever were when we were together as a family navigating grief.
Yes.
And somebody would say something that was just so hilarious. Or, after my mom passed and we were gonna bury her ashes up in her hometown. Same thing. Like I called my aunt up and I was like, "Hey, do you want to come have a drink with me and mom?" Because the energy of someone stays with you, and
Right.
like you get to honor that in all the ways. Like you get to feel all the things, and that is like if it is a thing that feels good to you. Believe me, if someone needs to laugh in a hard moment, I'm like, call me because I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it is much easier to build capacity for emotional regulation, for tolerance of stress. If, when you're not already under the weight of extreme stress or in crisis or at a breaking point, like it's really tough to work on hamstring flexibility or running form when you're actively running from a bear. It's tough to work, like it's like, oh, my form's not great. It's like you work on your form, um, and your nervous system regulation and your capacity and resilience in those moments where you can feel into something that allows you to play with it with a little bit less urgency or
Yes.
intensity. And it's just good to give yourself that opportunity to lean into that. Um, there are a couple of other things I want to make sure we talk about. Because this self connection as it informs self care. A lot of what we've been talking about, it all is self care, but I want to talk about self care, and I also want to talk about the importance of a safe container. So let's talk about self care first, because that's a thing where everyone's like, you got to do self care. So it can be great. And I highly recommend taking time for a night out with friends, or the yoga class, or the massage, or the art class, or even that weekend retreat, like the
Mm-hmm.
space that you offer to do
Sure.
this work in community and connection, and in a safe container, or a vacation. All of these things are incredibly valuable, and they're often quite replenishing. But those things that we schedule and attend don't make up for the daily debt we build when we are under chronic stress or even just normal life stuff. So using the power of the pause is how we keep things in better balance moment to moment as a practice, so that by the time we get to the vacation or the retreat or whatever it is that we're doing, we aren't in such a deep hole
Mm-hmm.
when we actually can get away from those things. Um, Also, not everything that's billed as self-care is good for your particular self or for everybody. Some people come with these long checklists of all the things. I'm doing all these things. Why am I not okay? I take this vitamin. I do this supplement. I'm doing this exercise. I eat these superfoods, drinking the kombucha, yoga, meditation, kickboxing, knitting, all the stuff. And then they beat themselves up when they still feel overwhelmed and exhausted and stressed despite a perfect score on their self-care checklist. And the step that's missing here too is the pause. Like these all can be incredible tools on this menu of things you can do. But if you don't pause first to be in self-connection, you may not be using the right tool at the right time for your body. Just because,
I can think of a story last night
sure.
that
Same.
where I did this, where, we had our first dinner on the patio. The weather's finally nice. I always look forward to eating out on the patio. And I cleared the table and I immediately started on the dishes. And I looked outside and my husband and our cats and our dog were hanging out. He was enjoying some wine. And I thought, what am I doing? It's gorgeous out. And I have like maybe an hour left of sunlight. I'm like, why don't I do the dishes at 8 instead of 7? And I put the food in the fridge that needed to be put up. And then I left everything and I grabbed my book and my glass of wine. I went back outside and I'm like, I'm doing the dishes later. This is too gorgeous of an evening and I want this time. Right. And so it's being conscious of the patterns that we just walk into mindlessly and saying, is this what I want my day to look like? Do I have to have it this way?
Yes.
I'd rather do the dishes in the morning and enjoy this lovely evening.
Yeah. And then when you see the dishes in the sink the next morning, it doesn't activate you because you made a conscious choice around it, right? Like
you got it.
Those dishes, they're like the metaphor.
And are we mad at the other people who made a conscious choice to do something different?
Right. They
How
were
dare they?
Right. But they were the model, right? In that case, you're like, oh, these people are in rest and digest after eating, which is the state we kind of like to have our nervous system in maybe after a meal, is resting and digesting. Do I really need to choose activation right now? It's interesting, like that is sort of that, well, I have to do this. I have to do this. And just because we have a sense that we have to do something, or just because an article or a book says fermented food is super healthy, it doesn't mean it's the right choice for you in that moment, right? It might be not the right choice for your body in that moment. What was right for you in that moment was resting and settling and appreciating what was around you. And what you need in a given moment will depend on your physiology and the state of your nervous system. Right? It's just something we have to examine for ourselves. So I'm glad that you did that you paused and were like, wait a minute here. Am I on autopilot or am I tuning in to be like, what feels nourishing right now? It's not that we don't care about ourselves and that we're not working hard to try to take care of ourselves. It's that we're not connecting with ourselves first to find the right things in that moment. And also to not overwhelm our systems. More is not always better. And what you need in a given moment may change. So I encourage people to use the pause to examine what's best for them rather than just following recommendations blindly or just doing the thing on autopilot. And to find the right thing for you, depending upon the realm that you're working in, sometimes you need to be working with trained professionals like doctors, therapists, coaches, nutritionists, fitness trainers, right? You want to make sure that you're being responsible about not just taking the supplement because you saw an article about it, but is that okay for you, given your unique physiology? And you can have the exact right intervention or remedy on paper, but if your nervous system is on overload, your body may see any change, any introduction of something new, any remedy as a threat or too much. I have experienced this myself, and it is incredibly confusing until you realize, oh, an overwhelmed nervous system can't take it in. So get that system into regulation before we start flooding it with more and more and more. We go slow to be able to
Yeah.
go fast.
Yeah. And the overstimulated nervous system actually needs you to say no to things more than anything,
Yeah.
and
And
to prioritize yourself over all the other things and people that you've said
yes.
yes to.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it's one that stays with me. And it's one my aunt often would remind me of is like, you got to put on your own oxygen mask first, right? I mean,
Right.
it's a cliche because it's true,
Because
right?
it's true.
And yeah, and we can't
Right.
stop the stressors
Right.
from coming, and we can't hide from them. They're going to keep coming in ways that
Yep.
are unpredictable and at a pace and volume that we often can't control. So what we
Yeah.
want to do, what we can do, and what we have power over is building that window of capacity and emotional regulation so that when those stressors arise and surprise us, we aren't still carrying all the weight of all the stuff that we haven't cleared yet that keeps building until we break and disrupts our lives, our health, and our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're exfoliating your
Mm-hmm.
soul. Like we can do a soul exfoliation.
Let's talk about a real facial.
Yeah, like that's a good band name actually. Soul exfoliation. I feel
Try and
like
say
we
it
should
5 times fast.
I'm into it. Let's form a
Yeah.
band.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. So let's talk about a safe container, which can be a band. But let's
Right.
let's
Right.
let's go back
Right.
to some of the things
Oh,
that
before we do
Tanya.
safe container, I did
Sure.
have one thing I wanted to echo here. And this
Yes,
is a
please.
practice that I've started to do and I think might be helpful for the listeners is I I'm in a lot of networking. I have a lot of different events I get invited to, I get asked to show up at, I choose to show up at, all the things. And I've gotten to a place where, as extroverted as I can appear, I'm actually pretty introverted. And I do need a lot of downtime and recharge time. When there's an event, I ask myself, can I show up with the energy level that other people are going to be looking for from me? Do I have that energy level to give tonight? And if
Hmm.
not, I need to say no. And so that's become kind of a litmus test for me as to whether or not I go to things. And I've had too many situations where I've pushed that because I thought I should be there. And I
Hmm.
show up and I realize once I'm there, my energy level is not ready for this. And it's almost embarrassing, the conversations I'm having with people, because I'm having to sort of explain away. And Angie, this happened to us the other night. We were at an event and I realized I wasn't feeling well physically. And I'm standing around, everyone's in the kitchen talking, and I'm like, I shouldn't be here. I'm not ready for this. And oh crap, how do I get myself out of it? And then Angela showed up. And she's like, I'm going to go in the other room and do this activity, this craft activity. I'm like, I'm coming with you because, like, I shouldn't even be here. And now I don't know why I said yes because of obligation. I said yes because of
Yeah.
obligation, right? Because I had missed the last event. And so I felt like, well, I'm just going to be sitting at home. I have no reason not to go. And it just brought that awareness down so clearly of if you're not there, it's okay to say no. And
Yeah.
not only okay, but like everyone was sort of looking at me like, what's wrong with you? We can tell something's off. And then they're like, why did you come? And the whole thing is just embarrassing and silly and not what my nervous system needed.
Yeah, we do. We sense each other's energy, and that's that polluting a space. Not to say you were
Right.
polluting the space because you weren't. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a thing to be navigated, and sometimes it surprises us. Sometimes we think we're okay, and then we get there and we're like there's no, oh boy, there's no gas in the tank. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
just like, again, naming it, it's so powerful because like what if you were to stay in friction? I mean, you named it. You said this is how I'm feeling, and I was like, I see you. Let's go make some bookmarks, right?
Right.
And it's so, and everyone else is probably like, yeah, this is a human thing that happens. No one's judging or disappointed. Everybody, I think, that was a
Right.
safe container. But I think, being able to name it is really powerful because then you release yourself from further self abandonment.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
release yourself from, and you also And I feel like Brene Brown shares an example about this, like needing to say no to something, and then later talks about how her kid was like, oh my gosh, like I saw you do this and I really want to say no to something. And then they felt like they had seen someone model that and they felt empowered to do it for themselves. And
Yeah.
so we never know the power of not showing up, how that might help
Right.
someone. Is the space we're going into a safe container, right? Is it a space where maybe your energy's feeling low, but the people that are going to be there are going to be cool with it? Or is it a space where you just really like, you either have to be on or you really shouldn't go? And, you know, a safe container is a good thing to just understand and be able to create for yourself, and to be able to be aware of and clock in a circumstance. And I want to echo some of Tanya's points from the last episode because she talked about this.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be working through some heavy stuff as you're doing expressive writing, maybe don't just sign up for the group writing class and, just kind of go into that without really having some trust and safety established with the people you're going to be working with and processing with. And for some of us, we've spent so long bypassing or circumventing our own needs, feelings, boundaries to care for others or to show up in work or whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
So even gentle somatic inquiry can open a floodgate for people. And sometimes there's real overwhelm and anger and grief, just a flood of things can come up. And if you sense as you do this that there's a lot getting stirred up, trust that and make sure you're not doing it alone. That's why I tell people to start with those good, calm, settled moments to build the muscle and calibrate the compass with a sense of ease. Because if you're moving through the activating stuff and you're having a hard time, co-regulation is helpful. And you can do that with a trained therapist, a trained coach, or other qualified support. A safe container is critical. And we're not meant to do this alone. I know I'm giving people resources, how to resource yourself, things that you can do on your own. But the message here is not that you always have to be doing this by yourself or that you should be figuring this out by yourself. That's not how we're wired as humans. We're wired to be in co-regulation and in community. And the more we can regulate our nervous systems, the more capacity and energy we have to be in a space of kindness and generosity and compassion and openness and connection. It's an act of resistance to take care of ourselves like this and to trust our own bodies and our intuition and what it can teach us.
Yeah.
Because when we have more capacity, we have more power. And that's a big reason I do this work. It puts people in touch with their own power. It gives them more space for the things that they can't do when they're feeling flooded or overwhelmed. Like you can't be in healthy connection with others as easily or have the energy to do anything except for get through the day. There's no energy left for play or personal evolution or activism or exploring new things. So it's not a failure to seek and have supports when healing our nervous systems. It's an essential part of the process, and we should trust it when we feel like we need to be in connection as we do this.
100%. Well, I feel like we covered all the bases we wanted to talk about as we prepped for this session. Is there anything that we didn't touch on?
I don't think so. I mean, there's such infinite potential in this work. I would encourage people to just allow themselves to be curious as you do this and see what comes up for you and let us know.
Yeah, for sure. So let's share with the listeners anything special you want to share about your business, how they can follow up with you, any offers or programs. We did mention at the beginning, you've got a brand new book, which I know is on Amazon and it's Kindle and paperback.
Yes.
And we'll tag that in the notes as well.
Absolutely. Yes. You can learn more about me and my approach at ajkcoaching.com. I have a testimonials page out there as well that provides perspectives on what it's like to work with me and what people's experiences have been that can give you some insight on that. And yes, if you're interested in getting a copy of the book, you can get it on Amazon, Kindle. I've got a page on my site where you can order it. And you can learn about speaking engagement inquiries as well. I'm also out on LinkedIn, and you'll often find me on your retreats.
Yes.
I'm often there.
Often on my retreats.
Often there. It's a great way to tap into a self-container and do some of this work with others. And for your listeners, like if they want to reach out to me via the contact form on my website and mention the podcast, I'd be happy to send you my somatic inquiry guide, which walks you through that exercise of dropping into your body and helping you work with the pause. And I also offer a no cost 30-minute consultation with anyone curious to learn more and to see if working with me could be a good fit for them.
And just so everyone knows, Angela can work nationwide via Zoom. You don't have to be local to the Chicago area where she and I are both based out of. But she offers a lot of really, really great expertise in various ways. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of this episode.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you for joining me today on the Intention Podcast. Today marks the last episode in season 1. This podcast will also be taking a break for the summer and returning on September 1st for season 2. So mark your calendars. As always, be sure to listen all the way to the end to get an inspirational quote related to today's episode. If you're looking to bring more intention into your life, reach out so we can set up an exploratory call. Through retreats, monthly soul circles, and one-on-one coaching, my programs and services can bring you back to a place of intention, allowing you to live a more switched on life. Check out my Harvest Healing Retreat held during the last weekend in August in an eco-spiritual community 90 miles south of Chicago. It's going to be incredible with happy hour in the garden, stargazing, a sound bath by the pool, one-on-one healing sessions, and so much more. Reach out to learn more about it. And now for today's inspirational quote. Self-care is choosing yourself as your why. Lori Milner. Go out and look at the world through new eyes. Till next time.